Assalamualaikum everyone, I am Shahar Sara. I hope you all are safe and fine. Today our topic of discussion is regulation of translation in eukaryotes. So let's start our topic. Just like transcription, translation can also be divided into three major steps that are initiation, elongation and termination. Translation initiation, it comprises of the events that lead to the positioning of an elongation competent ATS ribosome at the start codon of the messenger RNA. In elongation, polypeptide synthesis takes place, and lastly, this completed polypeptide it is then released after the ribosome encounters a stop codon during translation termination. So these are the three major steps of translation, and we will discuss in detail how these steps are being regulated in the successive slides. Several lines of evidence they have indicated that the initiation is the rate limiting step for translation, and when the cells they are treated with low doses of elongation inhibitors, let's suppose it is cycloheximide, what happens is that the condition is that the total protein synthesis it is only minimally affected, so the translation efficiency of most messenger RNA it is not altered. Moreover, the average density of the ribosome along the messenger RNA it is also significantly lower than the maximum packing capacity of one ribosome, that is 30 to 40 NT. So in order to enhance this maximum capacity, what one can do is that it can treat the messenger RNAs with the drugs that slow down the elongation. So here you can see that the complexity and the importance of translation initiation, and this complexity and importance of translation initiation can further be underscored by keeping in view the thing that around 25 proteins they are needed to ensure proper translation initiation. However, no such proteins are required for the other two steps, that are elongation and termination. For elongation and termination only few dedicated factors are needed. So that's why you can see that how complex the initiation step is, and keeping in view all these things which we have discussed about the initiation step, it is not surprising to say that the translation regulation it is mostly executed at the level of initiation. Now let's discuss the mechanism of translation in eukaryotes. Mechanism of translation initiation in eukaryotes. First, we will discuss that how pre-initiation complex is formed. Translation initiation it starts with the formation of 43S pre-initiation complex. However, the physiological conditions they favor the association of small 40S and large 60S ribosomal subunit, and as a result of this association 80S ribosomes they are being formed, but only free ribosomal subunits they can initiate the translation. Therefore, it is important that the post-termination ribosomes they must dissociate. In prokaryotes, this post-termination dissociation it is achieved through the ribosome recycling factor. So, what are ribosome recycling factor? Ribosome recycling factor they are denoted by they are abbreviated as RRF, and they are basically they act in releasing the ribosomes from messenger RNA after the completion of protein synthesis. However, in eukaryotes, no such function of ribosome recycling factors are seen. In eukaryotic initiation, in eukaryotes, initiation factors like E1, EIFS, EIF3, EIF1, EIF1A, and EIF6. They are written here in the fourth point. They are thought to promote this dissociation in eukaryotes, but still their mechanism of dissociation it is still unknown, and the recent data it suggests that the activity of these factors it is not sufficient to prevent the formation of ATS ribosomes, and therefore it is thought that the dissociation of ribosomes is directly linked to the 43S pre-initiation complex formation. Now let's see that how the 43S pre-initiation complex is formed. So the first step in 43S pre-initiation complex formation is the assembly of ternary complex. This ternary complex it consists of EIF2. EIF2 it basically stands for eukaryotic initiation factor 2. EIF2 a heterotrimer of alpha, beta and gamma subunits, methionine initiator transfer RNA, that is denoted by met transfer RNA I, and GTP. GTP is your guanosine triphosphate. And this assembly which we have discussed, that EIF2 heterotrimer and along with the methionine initiator and GTP, it is regulated by the GEF factor, that is EIF2B. So GTP is hydrolyzed after the recognition of the AUG start codon producing EIF2 bound to the GDP, which has a 10-fold reduced affinity for the methionine initiator transfer RNA. This EIF2B eukaryotic initiation factor 2B, it promotes the GDP to GTP exchange to regenerate active EIF2. In mammalian cells, the binding of active ternary complex to the 40S ribosomal subunit, it is aided independently by EIF1, EIF1A and EIF3. However, in budding yeast, EIF1, EIF3 and EIF5 and a ternary complex, they can be isolated as a multifactor complex, and this multifactor complex is abbreviated by MFC. And what happens is that it raises the possibility that this MFC is recruited to the 40S subunit as a performed unit. So the 43S pre-initiation complex is then ready to bind to the 5' end of the messenger RNA. Now let's understand that how this entire process that we have discussed it takes place through the help of diagram. So the first step is the formation of pool of free 40S subunits. Then the second step is the formation of ternary complex. Ternary complex, you can see here, it is been marked and it consists of methionine transfer RNA, pre-initiation transfer RNA, and it consists of EIF2 and GTP. Then the formation of 43S complex that comprises of the 40S subunits, methionine in pre-initiation transfer RNA, EIF2, GTP, EIF3 and EIF1A. It comprises of all these subunits. Here you can see that this MET is basically the methionine initiator transfer RNA, and this 2 is for your EIF2 and this is your GTP. Okay, and this is your 40S subunit, that is your 43S pre-initiation complex. After formation of ternary complex, 43S pre-initiation complex together with the 40S subunit is being formed. Here I want to mention one thing, that in eukaryotes there are basically the two systems of the translation, that are cap dependent translation and the cap independent translation initiation. So this is basically the major molecular events that we have discussed in the previous slides is about the cap dependent translation initiation. Here in the slide you can see that how the 48S initiation complex is being formed, and then by the joining of the last 60S ribosomal subunit, your 80S initiation complex formation takes place. So this is how basically the entire process looks like. Here in the slide, this diagram basically shows that how the formation of active ternary complex takes place. So the ternary complex, as we have discussed before, it consists of EIF2, a heterotrimer of alpha, beta and gamma subunits, and the initiator transfer RNA and the GTP. So here you can see all the subunits that are present in the ternary complex. So what happened is that their assembly is this entire assembly of ternary complex, it is being regulated by the guanine nucleotide exchange factor, that is your EIF2B. So what happened is that the GTP it is hydrolyzed after the recognition of the AUG start codon, producing EIF2 that is bound to the GDP, and this EIF2 bounded to the GDP, it has tenfold reduced affinity for the initiator transfer RNA, that is your MET transfer RNA. So this EIF2B, it promotes the GDP to the GTP exchange to regenerate the active EIF2. So it means that only by the combination of EIF2 with the GTP, you can say the regeneration of active EIF2 can take place. GDP with GDP it will be inactive, whereas with GTP it will be active. Now let's discuss that how this pre-initiation complex it is being recruited to the messenger RNA. So the recognition of the M7G cap structure, because we are studying the cap dependent translation, this recognition at the 5' end of the messenger RNA, it is basically mediated by EIF4F. This EIF4F is basically the abbreviation of eukaryotic initiation factor 4F. This eukaryotic initiation factor 4F, it comprises of three subunits: eukaryotic initiation factor 4E, eukaryotic initiation factor 4G, and eukaryotic initiation factor 4A. This eukaryotic initiation factor 4E, it binds directly to the M7G cap structure, whereas its subunit, that is EIF4A, eukaryotic initiation factor 4A, it is a dead box RNA helicase, and that is thought to unwind secondary structure of the 5' UTR, and UTR you know is the untranslated region. So why it do is that the reason behind this is that the 43S complex that we have discussed before, it can scan along the messenger RNA. And lastly, its third component, that is EIF4G, eukaryotic initiation factor 4G, it is thought to act as a scaffold protein. Scaffold proteins are actually crucial regulators of many key signaling pathways, and although their function is not strictly defined, they are known to interact or bind with multiple members of the signaling pathway. In mammalian cells, EIF3 from the pre-initiation complex, it interacts with the central domain of EIF4G. However, this interaction it is not found in the budding yeast, where the EIF4A is not stably associated with the EIF4E and EIF4G. If we summarize it, so altogether the binding of the pre-initiation complex to the messenger RNA, it involves the cooperative activities of eukaryotic initiation factor 4F, eukaryotic initiation factor 3, and eukaryotic initiation factor 4B, and possibly the PABP. PABP is basically the abbreviation of poly A binding protein, and this PABP it was initially identified as a protein that associates with the poly A tail at the 3' UTR of the messenger RNA. So this concerted binding of PABP and EIF4E, eukaryotic initiation factor 4E, to eukaryotic initiation factor 4G, it is thought to pseudo-circularize the messenger RNA. This pseudo-circularization, it basically provides a possible framework by which 3 UTR binding proteins, they can regulate translation initiation, as most known regulatory sequences they are found in 3 UTR, despite of the fact that translation starts at the 5' end of the messenger RNA. So the next step is the messenger RNA scanning and AUG recognition. So after the proper assembly at the 5' end of the messenger RNA, the pre-initiation complex, it basically needs to scan along the messenger RNA, and why it needs to do is in order to find the AUG start codon. So this model of scanning, it had originally be proposed by Kozak in 1999. So the messenger RNA can have two types of UTR. Unstructured 5' UTR, that is your untranslated region, whereas structured 5' UTR. So the 43S pre-initiation complex, it can bind to the messenger RNA that have an unstructured 5' UTR independent of eukaryotic initiation factor 4F, eukaryotic initiation factor 4A and the ATP. But it will need eukaryotic initiation factor 1 or eukaryotic initiation factor 4G in order to scan the start codon. However, on the other hand, the messenger RNA with the structure 5' UTR, it additionally requires eukaryotic initiation factor 4F, eukaryotic initiation factor 4B and ATP along with the eukaryotic initiation factor 1A. Eukaryotic initiation factor 4A helicase and eukaryotic initiation factor 4F, they are thought to promote the unwinding of the secondary structure of the messenger RNA, whereas eukaryotic initiation factor F1 and the eukaryotic initiation factor 1A, they are thought to promote a structural conformation of the 43S pre-initiation complex, and this structural conformation, promotion of structural conformation, it allows the scanning in 5' to 3' direction. Here in the diagram you can see the initiation complex, and you can see that how the interaction between the eukaryotic initiation factor 4F complex 43S and messenger RNA is being shown. And this eukaryotic initiation factor 4F, it is formed by the eukaryotic initiation factor 4A, eukaryotic initiation factor 4G and eukaryotic initiation factor 4E. You can see it, they all are labeled. And the complex 43S, it is formed by the eukaryotic initiation factor F, eukaryotic initiation factor 3, the small ribosomal subunit, and the eukaryotic initiation factor 2, and which in turn is formed by the methionine transfer RNA initiator and the GTP. And this the messenger RNA, it is recruited to the eukaryotic initiation factor 4F complex across the interaction of the 3' end and poly-A binding protein, that is your PABP, and the 5' cap and the eukaryotic initiation factor 4E. UTR region, that is your untranslated region. So you can see the entire structure here. In the very first slide we have discussed that the translation initiation, it comprises of the events that lead to the positioning of an elongation competent ATS ribosome at the start codon of the messenger RNA. So now let's see that how this translation competent ATS subunit is being formed. So now let's see. So what happens is that the 43S pre-initiation complex, it recognizes the start codon through the formation of base pairs between the anticodon loop of the initiator transfer RNA and the AUG start codon. And this stable complex that is formed, it is known as 48S initiation complex, and the selection of correct start codon, it is dependent upon eukaryotic initiation factor 1. Then several events takes place in order for the formation of 60S subunit to join the 48S complex and to form the ATS ribosome. So the eukaryotic initiation factor 5, it promotes the hydrolysis of eukaryotic initiation factor 2 GTP, and as a result what happens is that most of the initiation factor including AIF2 GDP, it dissociates from the small ribosomal subunit, leaving the initiator transfer RNA bound to the start codon. Recently it has also been found that a second step of GTP hydrolysis, it is necessary for joining of 60S and to render the resulting ATS ribosome competent for the polypeptide synthesis. This GTPase activity of eukaryotic initiation factor 5B, it is stimulated by the 60S subunits and even stronger by the ATS ribosome. So what is this GTPase GTPase. GTPases are basically a large family of hydrolase enzymes, and they bind to the nucleotide guanosine triphosphate and they hydrolyze it to the guanosine diphosphate. And this GTP binding and hydrolysis, it basically takes place in the highly conserved G domain that is common to many GTPases. Then what happens is that this GTP bound eukaryotic initiation factor 5b, it stimulates cis-TS subunit joining and GTP hydrolysis occurs, as I have told you that the function of the GTPase is after ATS subunit formation, and it is essential for the release of E1F5b. Taken together, two steps of the GTP hydrolysis that are required for the ATS ribosome formation. They also provide a checkpoint for the proper start codon recognition. So this is how your ATS subunit is being formed. So up to now we have discussed about the cap dependent translation initiation. Now we will see that how the cap independent translation initiation functions or works, and what is the difference of both the translation initiation. So the cap dependent events of translation initiation that were described above, they were most common for the cellular messenger RNAs. But this cap independent translation initiation, this way of initiation translation can happen through internal ribosomal entry sites, that is abbreviated by IRES. Internal ribosomal entry sites, they are heavily structured sequence elements in 5' UTRs of some messenger RNAs and with no obvious conserved consensus sequence. And the structured IRES segments in 5' UTR, they have an active role in the recruitment of the 40S subunit, and these elements, these IRES means your internal ribosomal entry sites elements, they are found in viral messenger RNAs and also in certain cellular messenger RNAs. Those cellular messenger RNAs that are involved in growth control, differentiation, apoptosis, and oncogenesis. And these messenger RNA, they are usually only weakly translated under normal condition, but they can be more efficiently translated upon down regulation of cap dependent translation. So we have discussed about both the methods of translation, regulation of translation. So now the question arises that why do cells regulate translation and how do they benefit from it? So one of the benefit is that the regulation at translation level, it can happen rapidly without the necessity of going through all the upstream processes of the gene expression. These upstream processes such as the transcription, messenger RNA processing, and messenger RNA export. Moreover, the translation regulation, it is usually reversible, and as it is often mediated through reversible protein modification such as the phosphorylation of initiation factor. So this is a reversible process. And the need of translation control, it is also, you can say, apparent for systems where transcriptional control is not possible. So which systems are those? They are such as reticulocytes. Reticulocytes are your immature red blood cells, and in immature red blood cells the transcription regulation, it is not possible. So in reticulocytes which lack the nucleus, oocytes or RNA viruses, here the transcription control is not possible, so the translation control is needed. Another reason for the regulation of translation is the spatial control of gene expression within the cell, and the requirement of the localized protein production in neurons, or you can say during the development, it can also be only met by the translational regulation, because the transcriptional regulation, it is restricted to the cell nucleus, you know it very well, and the translation is outside the cell. So this regulation is very much beneficial. Translation regulation, it also provides flexible control of gene expression. Because how I do is that flexible control of gene expression, because there are many molecular targets for the translation regulation, and which consequently can change translational efficiencies for many, or you can say only a few messenger RNAs. And the most important reason for this translation regulation, it lies in the fine tuning of gene expression. And there are other more, you can say, the numerous examples of genes that are regulated at both the transcriptional and translation level. So this is why this translational regulation of translation is necessary, and why all this process takes place. This is the reason behind it. So this was all for today's lecture, and how the regulation of translation in eukaryote takes place. If you want to read it in the written form, and you want to study in depth, then you can visit this. I have given the reference of the paper from which I have taken this material, so you can consult this. I hope you have understood up till now what we have discussed. Thank you for watching.